Welcome back to Inside Transracial Adoption. I'm Isaac.
And I'm Julie.
And on this episode, we dive into code switching and what it is and how it shows up in transracial adoption situations. We tell way too many embarrassing stories about me. And we just chat about, connected and what could have made us feel more connected when I was growing up. And so I hope you guys enjoy this episode.
One of the things with transracial adoption is that we're constantly being hit with cultural things that we don't understand as your parents. Things that are just kind of new to us that come out of the blue. And sometimes for many years are doing and saying negative things that are very hurtful and we don't even realize what we're doing. And one of the things that stands out in my mind was code switching. Like I didn't even know it was a thing. I just knew that when you were around your white family, you acted one way, and when you were around your black friends, you acted another way. Yeah. And I used to think that it was because you were embarrassed of us and embarrassed of your life. So it would offend me to the point of getting angry over it. Yeah. And I was venting to a good friend one time, and I said, I just don't know why he does this. Which, let me say, we all do that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I grew up in the South, and you guys always tell me, I can tell who you're talking to by your accent when you're on the phone. Yeah. You don't have one in Pennsylvania, and when you talk to your sisters, it comes right out.
Absolutely.
Kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, and your dad's is even worse, I think.
Especially a while ago, especially growing up, it was really bad.
Yeah. So I was talking to my friend and kind of venting probably after, during one of our really tough times.
Yeah.
Because they happened a lot. And she said, oh, you need to watch the movie The Hate U Give. I think there are things you don't understand. She said, and she just said, well, actually, the first thing she said when I was venting, she said, he's code switching. That's what he's doing. Just like no big deal. Why are you complaining?
Yeah.
And I said, what's that?
Yeah.
And she said, you need to watch The Hate U Give.
Interesting.
And that movie was so eye-opening to me on so many levels.
Yeah.
Just finally learned about that and understood that it's I don't know, it can be a protection mechanism. It can be just like comfort, whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, it's used, like I said, like we all kind of revert to different things like that, depending on the circumstances that we're in. Yeah. And so for those who are listening that maybe don't know what that is for a lot of Black kids that spend a lot of time in the white world as a protection mechanism, they're going back and forth. Because if they speak in their Black tone, for lack of a better term, I don't know what else to call it, then in their white community, then they're seen as ghetto and not respected. Yeah. If they speak in their white tone in their Black community, then they're seen as white. Yeah.
And I think even deeper code switching is an understanding.
Right.
You know what I mean? Very similar to how maybe like you were talking about country accent from Virginia. People understand that lingo, if you come from that environment, you understand that lingo. And so I think code switching, as much as it is exactly what you described, like a protection, and so that it's also, I think, a way of community. It's like it's a comfort. It's a shield down, not just in terms of protection, but just there's things that are understood already.
Right.
And I'm assuming this is actually around the time that I was in college, because that's really when I had more Black friends. And The Hate U Give came out when I was a freshman in college.
It was, I think it was after our fire when we were living in the temporary
house. This was actually a little bit older.
Yeah.
So I was like,
you had gone to Atlanta and come back.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. I was going to say, I wasn't sure when you first noticed that, because I was going to say it wouldn't have been high school that you would have noticed that, because I didn't really code switch in high school. If anything, I was just like acting one way with friends and then a different way at home. Okay, so that makes a lot of sense, actually. And that is definitely a time that I would, because when I lived in Atlanta for like a year, I definitely like talked a different way, lived a different way, like just had a different mannerisms about me just from living there and being ingrained in that culture.
Right.
And now I think I even still, to a lot of degrees, code switch,
You probably always, I mean, that's, like you said, it brings comfort, it brings a feeling of home,
Yeah.
kind of
Well,
thing.
absolutely. I mean, I think as I've become more confident in my racial identity
Mhm.
and I've related to Black experiences more and more, obviously not all of them, but a lot of them,
Right.
um, it became normal. It
Yeah.
just was a normal way of going back and forth. And also, I find comfortability and
Mhm.
ease in white settings, so I also know how to navigate those spaces. And
Right.
so I feel like it's a very normal occurrence for me to go back and forth.
Mhm.
I'm interested in, so like those first feelings of notice that you mentioned frustration, what, like, dive deeper into the feeling. Like, is it frustration that you think it's pretend, or is it frustration that you maybe just don't know or understand?
I think on, like, a surface level, you feel like it's pretend.
Oh,
But I
gotcha.
think
Yeah,
and
that
so
makes
you're like,
sense.
"Why is he faking this?"
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Kind of
Oh,
thing.
absolutely. Yeah.
And but I think on both sides, any of those things, anything that cause offense
Yeah.
is almost always tied back to, a not understanding and that we take it personal.
Yeah.
Like, you and I have lived our lives taking each other's decisions on a personal level,
Yeah.
and
Absolutely.
instead of
Mm.
communicating that, it's just lashing out or becoming withdrawn
Yeah.
and pulling away.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think that's fair. And I
Yeah.
wonder how many other adoptive parents, especially after their kids go to college and then come
Mhm.
back, have that experience where they see their kids acting in almost like new and fresh
Right.
ways. Like, and maybe they see it in high school depending on their high school experience.
Yeah.
But like, I wonder how many adoptive parents are actually like sitting in that, like in between, not really sure what to do with
Right.
the differences that they notice. I could also see a sports team being another one of these occurrences. Like your kid is one way in like a football,
Oh, yeah.
basketball setting, and and then a whole different way in like,
Yeah.
Christmas or like
Right.
family
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
dinners.
Yeah.
And so I could see this being an interesting bridge for people to overcome.
Yeah. And I think some of that's just normal. As your
Yeah.
kids grow from kids to adults, they're developing their own personalities.
Yeah.
I see it with Sarah and Zachary.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just think, who is this person and
Right.
which one's the real person sometimes,
Right.
yeah.
Well, I think
Which
that's a part of like
yeah.
figuring out who you are
Yeah,
as an adult. But I think
yeah.
code switching is like it's a cultural piece, right?
Right.
So it's like, you have a Hispanic, Black, whatever
Mhm,
race child. You probably see it in the Asian community as
mhm.
well. There's probably also like a almost a feeling of disconnect culturally from your child that occurs that you wouldn't occur with Sarah and Zach,
Right.
right? You just see
Absolutely.
like, oh, who is this person that is not necessarily who they were last Christmas,
Right.
right? Which I
Exactly,
think
yeah.
we see pretty often,
Yeah.
just because we're just in that phase.
Yeah.
But I think code switching, there has to be some feelings of like disconnect
Yeah, it's
associated
like
with
you're
it.
trying to adapt a whole as a
Yeah.
parent, you can feel they're trying to adopt a whole new culture.
Mm.
And again, it's we take it personal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that is one of the
Mhm,
things that was hard for us.
mhm.
Some of the things that led to a lot of our early like fights and some of the reasons I moved to Atlanta in the first place were because we were on these two different planes.
Right,
And I'm often saying two different things
right.
even, not even having the same conversation, but the
And both
feel.
taking it and both just like they're attacking. We're attacking
Yes,
each other. Yeah.
exactly. But I think it's very like I feel like that code switching idea, that feeling of disconnect from your child, that feeling of not being able to understand this side of them.
Mhm.
I think that for a lot of parents, that is can or for any parent, maybe that would be sensitive. That would
Yeah.
be
Mhm.
painful in a lot of ways. And I think we saw it in greater magnitudes when the first topics of race came up.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
like, why are you feeling these things?
Mhm.
How could you even feel these things? I
Right.
think was probably a feeling. I think you
Mhm.
mentioned having a feeling like, how could you even feel that
Right.
anybody was racist in your life?
Right.
Because it feels immediately like we used to be one and now we're
Right.
separate.
When I
Yeah,
spent and again, we've had
yeah,
talks on here where I've admitted that this was a huge mistake,
yeah,
but I spent so much time protecting you in secret
yeah,
that it was like, "Oh my goodness.
yeah,
I have cried so many tears and lost so many friends and fought so many battles
yeah,
to protect you from this,
yeah.
and now here you're talking about
Mm,
it."
yeah.
And I'm like, "What are you talking
So
about?"
then it also feels like a loss.
Right, yeah.
And that's interesting
Yeah,
too, because I can't imagine that we're the only people, like, you're the only parent who has gone through that.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, to feel almost as if the life you were trying to create for somebody is all of a sudden out the window.
Right. Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot wrapped into that time period for us.
Yeah.
Um,
And we're the first generation that's doing this with social media.
yeah.
So I'm feeling this way, and you're just blasting it all over social media
Yeah.
for all the
Yeah.
grandparents to see and everybody.
Yeah.
So while
Yeah.
you and I had need to figure it out, I'm hearing from friends and family, like,
Yeah.
what the heck is Isaac going through?
Yeah. And I also find
Yeah.
that I've also always found that to be interesting because I always look back at those posts
Uh-huh.
and I'm always like, why did the Lecrae post make people that angry? And I'm like looking, and I was actually joking because I was telling another adoptee who works in this space about this morning, and I said, they called me Radical Isaac, like Black Panther Isaac, but I had barely read an MLK book.
Right.
And so it's interesting actually now to look back at that and see that, yes, there was like these racialized posts being had. Like I was definitely posting about what I was reading. And I remember I shared some articles about police brutality that was happening that I could totally understand being triggering, especially for our community. But then I also laugh because I look at what was being posted and the point of life that I was in and think, man, I could have said some really crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And they might have been justified in this. But the Jesus shot Terrence Crutcher article is always my favorite one to bring up because that was such a debacle. It was such a big deal to people. And I just couldn't believe it from the title of it.
Right.
But I do remember that one being a big deal. And then Lecrae, who is a Christian rapper, people don't know, that was when he started talking about race as well. And that was very, very controversial.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm going to say something controversial here.
Yeah. Yeah, please.
But I mean, if you'll notice, any time a Black Christian starts to say anything about race, they're canceled by the Christian community.
Oh, yeah.
They can, it's Lecrae was one of the first in this time period to discover that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, that was one of the and that was social media wise one of the crazier like cancellations of Christian artists and of an artist maybe in general. And I remember because I was like literally in Bible college and I was going through my own motions, like just that. To me, that was like fire and fuel, which probably was not helpful to all the people who thought I was radical and crazy.
Right.
But to me, that was like, finally, is somebody seeing what I'm seeing? Because I was at this institution where I was experiencing all those things for the first time. And it's crazy to like, I don't think anybody would look back at those post or our discussions or anything that either of us said during that time period and think that's super crazy because it's such a regular conversation today.
Right.
Like we're talking 2015, 2016 when these conversations weren't really happening. So to us, I think it feels such a high magnitude when I would think it'd be funny for some people to like go look at Facebook, like our two different Facebook posts and say, what's the problem? And be like, you don't understand where we were. Where we were, you don't say stuff like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think for adopted parents, there's a sense when all these conversations start happening, and they should happen.
Yeah.
Like people should be having these conversations with their kids. But there's a sense of fear that he's starting to go down the road of me losing him.
Yeah.
Like he's going to find his birth family and we're never going to hear from him again.
Yeah.
He's going to go embrace that. And so anytime that you're trying to have conversation and all of these negative emotions are wrapped up in it, they just don't go well.
Yeah.
You know.
And I think that speaks to the layers of adoption because on the surface and maybe even down a layer, we're talking about racial issues and feeling like you see yourself represented and feeling connected to this side of yourself you don't understand. But there is also the element of adoption underneath there.
Right.
Which is that I have a Black family. That's a cultural piece that I'm missing as well.
Right.
And so I could see how that would actually, for you, that would be your first thought, where my first thought would be, oh, I just don't know how to navigate talking to Black people.
Right.
Like,
And I'm worried I'm losing you.
yeah, I'm trying to figure out how the Black kids stop
Yeah.
calling me Oreo, and like
Right.
you're trying to navigate like fear of losing me.
Right.
And so again, two people having separate conversations,
Right.
which I feel like is such a adoption like theme.
Right.
Like adoptee trying to figure out who they are,
Mhm.
adoptive parent trying not to lose their child or feeling like they're losing
Right.
their child.
Yeah.
It's like maybe a tale as old as time.
Right. Yeah.
But that's funny to me to think about that.
Yeah.
Not funny, obviously, but
Right,
like
yeah.
because it was a painful time of our lives. But
Yeah.
it's funny to think that where I was with it was just trying to feel accepted by this demographic that I
Right.
didn't know, and where you were was trying to hold on to our relationship,
Right.
the years invested.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I think that's always been probably my biggest fear. And I don't know if that's true for every adopted mother.
Yeah.
Maybe it is. I don't know,
Yeah.
but and maybe it's wrapped up in all of my infertility loss and miscarriage loss and all of that. But um, from day one with both of my adopted kids, it's been
Mm.
how do I build a relationship that I don't lose?
Yeah.
And just so fearful of losing them. So we've been, uh, and some people have that fear and hold on tighter,
Yeah.
right? And become overprotective. And in some ways, I was
Mm.
very protective of you guys. But mine was okay, let me embrace open adoption. Let me let them know that I'm walking this with them.
Yeah.
Like, like
Yeah.
I mean, we tell people all the time, maybe we're too open, maybe we overshare
Yeah.
too much, but anything is on the table at all times. Like
Yeah.
you guys can say anything to us,
Yeah.
which creates a parenting dilemma
Right.
because then if you get in trouble, you're not going to say something to me the next
Yeah.
time. So like you can confess anything
Yeah.
to us. But
Yeah.
but sometimes there are consequences that have to happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I remember when I was sitting in the hospital with his birth mother
Mm.
and just saying, and she would look to me for every decision that the doctors or nurses would come in.
Yeah.
And I just looked at her at one point and said, I'm not intimidated by you.
Yeah.
If you were to decide to take that you can't go through with this, like that's your prerogative to do.
Yeah.
That's your right. So this is your time. You
Yeah.
make these decisions. You choose the clothes that he wears. You give him his first bottle. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't intimidate me to let you be involved. And we kind of had the same
Yeah.
with your birth family.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
just like, let's do open adoption. Let's,
Mm.
oh yeah, I've
Let's
told
try to
you,
navigate it. Yeah.
yeah, that's been a hard one to navigate. But
Yeah.
I remember telling you I don't remember how old, if you were a
Yeah.
teenager or early 20s, but I just said, like, it doesn't intimidate me for you to have a relationship with your birth family.
Yeah.
I've even asked you, and you have been very clear that no, you don't want this. I said, I'll go with you. I won't,
Yeah.
I'll stay in the hotel room.
Yeah.
But just to be there as a support to you if
Yeah.
and you're like, no, mom, I need to do this myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, cut the strings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And I think that's always been something very good and powerful and I think important to do. And recognizing that there's fear involved there and being open about that, I think probably gives like a sigh of relief and like air to a lot of adoptive parents out there.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of adoptive parents, that's their fear too.
Yeah.
Maybe all adoptive parents,
Yeah.
that's their fear too. Is like, is this child that I love going to one day
Right.
not want to be a part of this
Right.
family? And I've always said, like, I think that it's very, very rare that an adoptee would choose that for no reason.
Right.
Like would you grow up and decide that?
Right.
That I think oftentimes adoptees only like disconnect with their adoptive parents if their adoptive parents actually don't give them rights to their story, don't allow them to explore these emotions, don't allow them to search if they feel like searching.
Right.
That those things, like actually holding back and not creating those doorways that you've created or have those conversations that we've had, those are actually what lead adoptees to feel like, hey, maybe it actually isn't healthy or safe for me to have a relationship with my adoptive parent. And so I think that to me is a great story of like, it's going to be fearful at times, but like if you go through it that is actually how you build the
Right.
relationship,
And I
right?
think, yeah, and it just like going back to what we originally started talking about. So all of the code switching, the
Hmm.
acting differently, the wanting to do your hair differently,
Oh yeah, the
as
hair stuff
much
was
as
crazy.
much as every hairdresser, even black hairdresser, said
Yeah,
Isaac does not have the
yeah,
type of hair that handles an afro well. You
yeah,
still had to try
yeah.
it. You
The hair
still-
stuff was crazy.
yeah.
We should actually, I should have a montage go through here of the various hairstyles. It will be terribly embarrassing, but there is an insane amount of
Yeah.
different hairstyles that I went through in middle school and high school.
Yeah. But just if everyone could understand that none of this is personal,
Yeah,
you're not losing them, for the adoptee to understand. But that's putting a lot of
yeah,
responsibility on a child.
yeah.
Like a child's not going to understand,
Oh yeah,
but just for adoptive parents to understand, like none of this is personal.
yeah,
They,
absolutely.
and I still just go back to like we all want to know our culture. We all
Yeah,
want to know our roots. And yes, we are all American. Yes,
yeah,
that is true. But I
yeah,
always go back to Texans because I feel like
yeah.
they're the most prideful about their heritage.
Oh yeah,
You know,
exactly. They are
like
from Texas.
so you
Yeah,
tell a Texan you're not allowed to know your heritage and you can't
yeah,
celebrate the culture of being a Texan. It's just
yeah. They wouldn't want that. Yeah.
right. Yeah, yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
So
I'm
yeah.
sorry. I had just having like
Mhm.
visual flashbacks of how I went and saw the NWA movie, Straight Outta Compton. I
Oh
went to
yeah.
saw Straight Outta Compton probably like 3 times actually.
Uh-huh.
And then I had to do the Eazy-E hairstyle. And so I'm just having flashbacks to using the S curls in our kitchen.
Oh no, I remember. Yeah,
Do you remember when I did the S
yeah,
curls in the middle of our kitchen like twice?
yeah.
That was so painful. And sorry, you said something so profound, and I just the whole time was envisioning just
Yeah,
the wavy hair that I
yeah,
had
yeah,
for like, I don't know, 4 months.
yeah.
And I remember after it stopped being like pulled like down
Uh-huh.
and it was kind of back a little bit fluffy, every time I got in water,
Yeah,
it would go straight back down and be curly, and it was so insane.
yeah,
I gotta find those
yeah,
pictures. But
yeah.
yes, what you said was actually impactful.
I forgot what I said now.
Oh man, that was a crazy time,
Yeah,
man. And it's funny because you mentioned like just mentioning that to me made me think about how those were the tiny ways I was trying to connect.
right,
Like before I even, code switching was even a term I knew
right.
or any of those things, but those were the tiny things I was doing to try to like understand, feel connected. Like I was
Mhm,
on social media looking at different hair posts, trying to copy those.
mhm.
Um, and so it's interesting to think like as much as it is about culture and race, there's also an element of it that like just goes back to adoption.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
maybe it just all circles back there.
yeah. Yeah, and like you said, like even if you're a black kid growing up in a white community, you might still struggle with all of that, but then
Yeah.
you still have this extra layer of rejection
Mhm.
on both sides,
Oh yeah.
that has a layer of fear that I think just has everyone on edge all the time and reacting
Mm.
irrationally.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Irrationally is a good word for both of us, I think.
yeah.
You know what I
We
mean?
might
Because
be that way anyway.
I definitely had some irrational
Yeah,
moments, aka the easy E hair.
yeah.
Yeah, wow. I mean, I feel like the thing that probably I needed most because I'm just not a talker as
Uh-huh.
much as I talk on all this stuff, like I'm
Okay.
just not a talker.
Right.
I think it's like just letting it play out.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the opposite of me.
That's like
I
it's true.
have to talk through everything
Yes.
immediately.
Yes.
I
And
can't let anything sit. Yeah.
and that's the same reason that like I want to do the birth family thing alone is because like I'll probably just want to sit in silence that
Yeah.
night. Like I probably just want to just not have any communication. It's not that I wouldn't mind you were there. It's actually
Right.
I know that you would want to talk about it and I probably would not want to talk
I mean,
about
you
it.
famously said to me multiple times, "All right, mom, this is happening in my life, and you have 3 questions. Make
Oh,
them good."
yeah,
You've
absolutely. I
said
just
that to
don't I want time to sit with things.
yeah.
I don't want to immediately go into things. Even when I have like days that are like good or
Mhm.
days that are bad, I never really want to jump into just talking about them.
Yeah.
Like I literally just I want to come home, I want to relax, and then like I want to like warm up to the idea of
Right.
talking.
And I have a million questions.
Yeah, you're ready to go off the
Yeah.
bat, and I need just the space to chillax and either enjoy that I had a good day, somber that I had a bad one, or even just like have a moment of breathing before I dive into like
Right.
thinking about it.
And I'm trying to you don't know this now
Yeah.
because you don't live with me anymore, but with your younger siblings, I'm trying to A, remember that,
Yeah.
and B, just understand that from me, that comes from just
Oh,
like I have such an anxious spirit.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
I have a
absolutely.
million like I can't let anything sit. Like I've got
Yes.
to, So yeah.
Yes. And that's not always a bad thing
Yeah.
about you. It's like you can be very helpful and very good and can move things along.
Mhm.
It's just I think one of those like little personality
That
things
during that time was really bad.
during that time was really bad and difficult for me.
Yeah.
Um, but also just like like my personality
Mhm.
just doesn't like isn't as like smooth with.
Yeah.
And so it's
Yeah.
not something that I don't know that we could have avoided.
Right.
But it's just it's how I am now too, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? And so it's like there are times that I want to talk a lot to you about stuff.
Yeah.
And there are times where I'm dealing with something and I'm probably going to talk to you about it next week
Right.
because I
Well,
just
and
want to be with something.
I think this is true. You
Yeah.
can tell me if I have an inflated ego here,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
feel like I can always tell when something's going on with you,
Yeah.
and I will ask you, and you will always say, "Nope, everything's good. I'm fine.
Yeah.
Everything's fine." And a week to 2 weeks later, you'll come
Yeah.
back to us and talk to us about it.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
so that's another thing that I've had just and my
Yeah.
parenting have just had to learn.
Yeah.
Just let them be. Like it's gonna have. But during
Yeah.
that time, like you were not as much anymore with me. I think this might have just been
Yeah.
an angsty teenager thing,
Yeah.
but you were a button pusher.
Yeah.
And so you knew that my button was making me feel insecure
Yeah.
and making me look stupid.
Mm.
And you were a master at both of those things.
Pressing the buttons.
I remember
Yes.
Sarah saying to me one time,
Yeah.
"You have lots of buttons to push, and I avoid them at all costs." Isaac walks up to them like he's in an elevator and pushes all of them.
Yes. There are many
Yeah.
people that do
Yeah.
feel like I push their buttons all the
Yeah.
time. I don't know if that's a love language for me or just something I enjoy
Well,
doing, but I do press
I mean,
buttons.
I might be overthinking this,
No, you're
but
not. There are probably people that might jump into the comments of this and be
yeah,
like, Isaac pressed my buttons all week.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it may be overthinking for me to say, could that be an attachment thing?
Oh,
Like
yeah.
you're like for me, I just felt like you were
Oh,
constantly trying to push me away
yeah.
to see if I would go away.
It was absolutely an attachment thing then.
Yeah,
Oh, undoubtedly. Like
yeah,
I think I have a little bit of like with people that I'm comfortable with, I have a very annoying personality. Like I just like to joke and make fun and like
uh-huh,
I like to roast as love.
right.
But I think at the time period that you're talking about,
Mhm,
I was definitely pushing away,
mhm,
testing limits, seeing if you would,
mhm,
leave in a
right.
sense. And I think that's also a lot of my childhood was
Yeah,
that, you know what I mean? Just
yeah,
like now, I do have a playful energy and
right,
like, I like to joke around. We do that at family events or like roast fest, you know what I
right.
mean?
Yeah,
We
yeah,
all say things that probably people would be shocked if they heard you say that to
yeah,
somebody, that you care about. But that's just like a normal roasting for
yeah,
us. But then in that period you're talking about, I think it was not even just having that spirit, but also pushing the limits of that to see, okay, will this be the thing?
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, definitely. And in that time, if we had it to do over again, and what I have tried to do more with Micah is just to
Mm,
say, all right,
yeah.
I know you're pushing. I know you don't want to talk about this right now, but we're not through.
Yeah.
I love you very much,
Yeah.
and I want us to get past this.
Mm,
We're going to come back to this later.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
I wish that I had known more to do that during that time with you
Yeah.
instead of continuing to
Yeah.
push and then
Yeah.
take it personal and then imagine that you were doing every drug and every form of rebellion behind my back while you
Yeah.
were being that quiet.
Yes, yes,
Not to
yes.
say that you weren't doing some things. Like I'm
I
not
know.
naive.
Yeah, I wasn't doing a lot of drugs.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Causing trouble, sure, but
Yeah.
just tea.
Just tea.
Just tea. Yes. That's an interesting story too.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
That you could tell that story. That's
I don't
hilarious.
know.
But it is. It shows how much we just didn't know what was going on with you. So our mind
Oh,
went
yeah.
crazy.
Crazy, yeah.
Yeah.
So I was homeschooled and like in our like little homeschool community, they like there was all these like different guys who smoked pipe. And one of the things that they would do is they would use tobacco in different teas, like different teas to like put into a pipe. And so me and my friends were smoking tea. So there was like a tea packet, like basically spread out on like a desk I had in my room. And you thought it was weed.
Yeah.
And so my dad was working with this videographer at the time who he knew had experience with marijuana. And so he had him come over and look at the
he
tea.
took it to him.
Oh, he took it to him to make sure that it wasn't weed.
And this was before, like that. I mean, you were young, so it would still be a big deal in our home. But like this was before it was a.
Oh, it was before like you could like recreationally even come close to having weed.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was definitely a big deal.
Yeah. But that's how we still did not trust one another at all. And so our mind, just like with everything, went to the worst case scenario.
Yes, absolutely.
And so that's probably another thing that I would like say to people is just have conversations. Don't let your mind, because
absolutely. And have those conversations like maybe over periods as well. Like don't feel like it's like you have to knock it all out in one conversation. Like take cues, right? You know, adoptees are typically more closed off.
Right.
And so it's like if you're catching that, like, you know, spread it out. Like you said, like sometimes it takes a week or 2 weeks for me to really open up about something.
Right.
And so like, you know, give it some time also. Maybe just just keep circling back and keep opening the door.
Yeah.
With that, did you say that's fair? Like,
absolutely.
Keep circling back, keeping the door open rather than trying to knock it out in one conversation.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because when we think about because your kids, your children, you're working on not fully developed brains yet, and so for us for parents to think that that their kids are on the same maturity level or able to deal with, and then to imagine all of the layers of grief, and attachment and everything that they're going through, and trying to unpack, which is going around in their mind, like it's a lot, and it's just having lots and lots and lots of grace.
As you need for teenagers.
Yes. Yeah.
What about you? When you were going through this period of time, what would have been helpful from me?
I don't know if it's fair to say that, because like I said, you were just young and you know, I don't think you were in the place maturity wise and in your grief cycle to offer me much.
Right.
So I just think I wish that I had not expected so much from you. I wish that you could have said to me, I love you so much. I'm glad you're my parents, you know, kind of thing. But you weren't in the space to be able to do that. And it might be unfair to wish that, you know. I wish that you could have voiced, no, I'm not thinking about leaving you guys. But you're just young.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think that's fair though. I think that's maybe common as well. Like just wishing that there could be some vocalization of love. And I think that's, you know, it's a fair request. You know, I love you.
Right.
So there you go.
Oh, I love you. Thank you.
That's all I got for you.
You listen. Oh,
just that one time. Clip it right now.
No, I said the other day to your dad, I'm like, I think Isaac tells me he loves me and even hugs me more than any of the other kids now. So,
very good child.
Yeah.
How to do a 180 towards my mid-20s here. And so, I think that's good feedback though. And I think, you know, one thing I like about when I hear you share is that I typically hear a lot of I hear it from other people, right? I hear the pains and the struggles and the ups and downs, and like I think about what maybe sigh of relief. Like, because when I share and I'm like, they're going through their things, and I'm like, trust me, they do love you. It's like, it's one thing, right? And that probably is helpful, but there has to be some healing that happens when it's like, they're getting to hear from you and feel like, okay, yes, I'm not alone.
Right.
Like, yes, I understand that's going to take some time and there's healing and there's grief and there's all this, but there is a part of me that like, as much as that does make me like, oh man, I wish I could have done that. It's exciting and like heartwarming for me to also know that there are going to be some people who like, maybe even the first time are like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. It's
It's
gonna be
not
okay.
just me.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not just me.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
The day will come, or these days will pass,
Mhm.
and things will be okay.
Yeah. Yeah.